this show sort of happened for you. I remember we first met when you were doing, I
Yeah,
think, an off-Broadway
yes,
play
yes.
right before this show started.
Yes, that's right.
So you had this sort of maybe a little later in your career than you would
Yeah,
expect to have a
yeah.
show that ran this long. What was your first entry into the first time you got an agent like?
Oh, well, I had a rough entry. Like it was here. In fact, I think about it every time I go through Times Square, because I had moved here, like many people, for a relationship, and now I found myself in New York. And this woman that I was dating, kindly enough, set up a meeting with her agent, and it was a legitimate agent. It was like a real agent. It wasn't like a Broadway Danny Rose situation. It was
Right.
I was nervous. I put on like my cool clothes, which was like my black T-shirt and black pants, which has never been cool.
No.
Ever.
It is a good way to say, I'm an actor.
Yeah, totally.
Who right after this has to go be a waiter.
I'm not saying I was wearing Capizios, but I'm also not saying I wasn't.
Right, sure. You don't want to commit either way.
no,
right,
no.
yeah.
But anyway, so I ended up going up and meeting and sat down with a gentleman at the agency who looked at my resume, which had like maybe 2 or 3 regional theater credits, and basically set it down and started looking me up and down, and began telling me all of the things that were wrong with me physically. He was like, so your eyebrows are too big for television, and your features are really too big for film. And meanwhile, he's just confirming my own self-loathing. I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
Like, uh-huh.
You weren't right. You didn't go in going like, wait till he sees these eyebrows.
Yeah. No, I was like, nailed it. He's like, you got a weird chin. I'm like, it's a joke. But anyway, so he basically says, well, maybe you could do theater. Are you willing to shave your arms? Which I was like, and I was so desperate to get an agent that I was like, absolutely. Like, I'm dying to shave my arm. I mean, are you kidding? I'm looking for an excuse to shave my arm. This is great. And he said, great, shave your arms and get new headshots and come back and we'll have another conversation. And I kind of slinked out of the office and went downstairs into Times Square, and I was, just kind of like mortified and devastated. And I was standing there, and as I was standing there, I had a little accident in my drawers. I soiled myself.
You did?
Yeah. And I remember thinking really clearly, so this is the bottom.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah, that's the bottom.
This is it.
They do say if you're going to soil yourself, Times Square is as good of a place.
It's amazing.
Because you're probably only a half a block from someone else who's like, I'm also there, buddy.
I mean, Elmo soiled himself.
Elmo probably, yeah.
Statue of Liberty soiled
herself. Yeah, exactly. This is no joke. This is a terrifying thing that happened to you. I guess it's probably about, 5-6 years ago? There was an email hack.
Yeah.
And you were one of the celebrities who had your email hacked.
Yeah. Like 7 or 8 years ago, I got a call. There was this person who was hacking celebrity emails, and he was arrested, and I got a call from an FBI detective saying you were one of the people who was hacked, and it really freaked me out. I was kind of crazy, and he said, I was, in this phone call, I was like, well, so why? Like, why is this guy hacking people's emails? And the detective was like, well, he's selling information. He was selling information. He was selling it to tabloids. He was selling photographs and emails, and I was like, wow. So, like, what did he sell of mine? And he was like, nothing. And I was like, well, what do you mean nothing? And he was like, he couldn't find any takers.
It wasn't for a lack of effort.
No. And I was like, wait, he was actively trying to sell my information and nobody wanted it? He was like, well, Mr. Burrell, I've read through all the evidence, and frankly, you're pretty vanilla. And I went from feeling like a victim to being super defensive.
Yeah.
I was like, I think you need to go back through those emails.
I mean, you go back through May 2002.
Oh, yeah.
There's some stuff.
There's some stuff. Somebody missed my chili recipe. Because Because I don't think everybody's putting nutmeg in that. You know?
Well, I'm glad you avoided the worst of that.
Yes,
and congrats on this new show. This is Mike Scully,
Yes.
fantastic writer. His wife, is it Julie,
Yep.
and Amy Poehler, all involved in the
Amazing.
show. And it is genuinely so great to have you here. Congrats on the amazing run on.
Thanks, man.